increase to elected. Then when Governor Lee did his budget, he put a 2% increase for elected officials retroactive. So we're going to have to go back and readjust our figures to give all the elected officials that 2% increase, which that's going to not affect our property tax rate. It's just going to affect the expenses that we've approved. The budget is not an approved budget to the third reading. We can go back and make adjustments and changes to it as we need to up until that third reading. So felt like it's better to go ahead and start with the budget as clean as we know it needs to be. So we're going to go ahead and take this to budget and finance, and then if it's approved there, go ahead and add it to the budget for our second and third reading. Right now, that will increase, we think, the 101, 14,000 and some change, and 131, about $1,700. Still working on some of those figures to be sure that that's all there is to it. And we'll let you know, of course, in budget and finance what those are. But there's a lot of budget amendments coming from schools, year-end budget amendments moving around. They may actually have some that goes because of the same thing. They may have to deal with this as well, so we may have to amend their figures as well, but shouldn't influence the revenue side of things. Is that correct, Mayor?
Yeah, that's my understanding. As you said earlier, because they made it retroactive to the current fiscal year, we're statutorily required to give these raises. We have no leeway in this whatsoever.
Have no choice in that.
It would be roughly $2,000 increase.
Well, if some of them are making 60, it'd be $1,200. So
I'm figuring roughly overall.
probably with the taxes and stuff, that it would bump it close, a little shy of that.
Some making more, some.
Yeah.
What's highest?
But we will know. We will have an exact figure as to what it amounts to. They will give us the salary schedules on what their minimum. All of our county elected officials make the minimum salary, with the exception of Dr. Satterfield. Of course, he's not elected anymore, so. And it will affect us as well. Our pay is tied to them. We will get 2% as well. So it does affect us plus the 8 elected officials, I guess, that we have. Not sure how it affects judges. Do you know if it affects judges at all? I think they were getting an increase anyway, were they not?
Well, that comes through the administrative office of the courts, tells us what they got to do on there. And they're on a different scale than the elected officials are. They have their own.
But it's all supposed to tie back to population. Census count on the judge.
It does, but it's a different scale than it is for the other elected officials.
And they look at different, they look at their volume in the court. There's a lot, their formula is totally different.
What about teachers?
Teachers are covered in the budget. I think Clint, that's part of what he was talking about, that they had figured it at 3%. They actually figured out at 3.35 or something to that effect. And so I don't know. I haven't seen any figures from him yet. Have you? As to where and how this is gonna, but it shouldn't amount. It shouldn't matter because he's got to work off of our budget figures that we gave him. And unless he comes back and wants more money to do that, which they should have money in their budget to be able to do it. So I don't see that that's gonna probably happen, even if that's asked for. Mayor, we skipped over your report so you could get here. So if you've got anything to report, just jump into it.
Really, what I'm thing I got to report is got some issues we were looking at in the past, like whether to move the election commission up here or not, or move anybody up here or not. That's going to front the building committee, I believe, June 14th. 17th. And we're still working with the group that's doing the wage study, hopefully coming down to the end of that. They have sent us some preliminary numbers, but they want to talk to other elected officials and department heads before they finalize everything. We're going through all the job descriptions they send us and making any last minute tweaks or adjustments to those to make sure they fit the positions. So like I said, hopefully within the next month, we'll be able to take that to the personnel committee along with the personnel policy changes we're going to recommend. That's really the biggest items we're looking at right now. In the future, I would like to look at making some changes to our codes as far as what were the municipal codes, because they haven't really been updated like they should have been since we went Metro. The first 3 chapters of the code talk about how the town of Hartsville operates, and it no longer exists. And then there are some, particularly in law enforcement sections, there's some sections in there that I think are redundant because there's state law that would override whatever we got locally. And if it comes down to charging somebody with something from the police department, they're going to charge them under state law. They're not going to do it under ordinance. You hardly ever see those ordinances enforced. I'll give you an example. There's under the ordinance, it does allow them to give somebody a fine for assault, but there's an assault statute in the criminal law. So they're going to cite them under the criminal law. They're not going to cite them under the ordinance. So I just think we can go and clean up some of those sections. Still trying to work with Tommy, and I think he's going to talk to the Tennessee Association of Utility Districts on Title 18, which covers how at that time as the water department, how the water utility operates. My position is when we passed that new ordinance in February of last year, that it kind of made that section obsolete. But we're working with Tommy to try to see if we can pull some of those things over and put them in with the water department's rules and regulations, which is what the ordinance last year said. All rules and regulations, how it operates, is done under the water utility. That's what the county commission passed. So there are some things that are in there that are not covered under the water utilities policy. So I think there'd be good things to include. So we're going to try to move those over and put them under rules and regulations of the water utility instead of being in that ordinance book. So just a lot of things like that. There's some things regarding the building official that still talks about how they work with the board of commissioners for the town of Hartsville. Again, that doesn't exist. So just trying to update all that stuff and get it current.
When we're talking codes, we're not talking building codes. We're talking the ordinances that are on the board pertaining to the laws and parts.
Yeah, it's still listed. It's still on the cover of it. It still says it's the Hartsville Municipal Code. So we need to update all that. There are some sections you're going to have to determine. You want to apply throughout the entire county. You just want to apply inside urban services. How you want to do that? Again, that's going to be a further discussion, and I'm not bringing that forward this month. That's just something I want to let you know that we're going to look at going forward.
Will that be done by yourself or your office, Mr. Beller, in conjunction with the two, us, how will that be?
Well, I've talked to Mr. Miller about it, and I went through particular law enforcement sections, and I probably got rid of just about all of it on my own. So we'll have to speak to Mr. Miller about it, get his feedback on it, but it has to go through, like the law enforcement sections, but I have to go through the law enforcement committee to come up to the county commission. So it'll have to go through the committee process, but ultimately any changes have to be approved by the county commission.
Is it okay to go ahead and say that we have the report on the jail, the feasibility, or what was it called?
It's a jail needs assessment.
Needs assessment. I couldn't think of that term.
We've got the one copy. They kind of sat down. We went to this conference. They sat down with Mr. Joe and myself and kind of did the 30,000 foot view of the jail needs assessment. Still haven't had the opportunity to sit down and go through it page by page.
He said, I just finished this. I got it out in the car. Y'all want to look at it? And said, yep. So we did.
Yeah, it was kind of, everybody kind of sat down after lunch and just went over it. Like I said, he said he finished it, I think, what was the day, in the afternoon, the day before, and he drove up to the conference.
I think he was very proud of the sheriff.
I think he was ready to get rid of it and move on to something else. So, but the initial number they're looking at that we're going to need in the next 20 years will be 105 beds. Given our population.
105 total.
Beds.
And that includes female, male, also some segregation type units or units where if you had to segregate somebody from the population because of health issues and things. So there's a little bit of that involved in it.
What about juvenile?
Sir?
What about juvenile?
No, you do not.
No
have
juvenile.
juvenile prison.
No, Ms. Parker.
Will that be enough beds projecting into the future? I know when I took a tour of the jail, he had 60 at one point a while back.
That's what this has come back. Now it'll be up to us to decide whether we can increase that. We can, just based on their figures, number crunching. That is what they're recommending should, with our rate of growth, where we're at now, carry us forward. Now, that's not including housing any state inmates. That's strictly our needs. So some of our overcrowding has been because we were housing some state inmates that we may not be able to do that. Or do we want to build more capacity and so that we have room to house state inmates? But the state is pulling inmates out of local facilities. They're trying to get out of that business. So we shouldn't build a facility counting. So there's a lot of things that are still have to be answered. We have a good, strong committee put together right now that are looking at all of these issues, trying to do it from a purely analytical standpoint and not just off the cuff or what somebody thinks we might need. And their report's very thorough. We'll get it as soon as we get copies. I know he said he was going to send us a PDF on
He's
it.
gonna send us a PDF, and then I'm gonna send that to our county corrections partnership committee. That's our Judge Kane, Judge Linville, District Attorney's Office, Public Defender, staff from the jail, one member of the planning commission. I think there's
Sheriff.
7 total.
Sheriff,
Sheriff's not on it.
he's not on it?
No,
Okay, okay.
he wanted the jail administrator, and then there's Shane Burton, county commissioner, so both
Right.
of those are on there.
Yeah.
But we had met last year after TCI, Bob Bass and Mr. Wall, Director Wall came, we went and talked to them afterward, and they strongly suggested that neither myself nor the sheriff sit on this committee, just work with them very closely.
Yeah.
So we staffed it with, we put it with other people, particularly, I was very happy that Judge Kane was willing and able to serve on it. That's a big issue right there. And another part of the jail needs assessment went beyond the jail itself and looked into what jails and courts have done to try to reduce population during COVID, and trying to see if we can carry forth some of those practices going forward, like release on recognizance and really pushing those kind of things. And I think there's been talk of bail reform and those kind of things going forward. So everybody's really looking at these criminal justice things, trying to take pressure off the local jail. So that's why you're seeing that 105 number. And they're really stressed not to take into account or rely on getting state inmates, because just 2 months ago, they pulled 38 inmates out of the Smith County Jail. And that really hurt them. So the gentleman that's doing this, the jail needs assessment, Mr. Hart, he had spoken at other councils we've been to, and he strongly suggested, do not rely on that state inmate money to be there, because they're looking to reduce it and they can pull them out of it at any time. It's not a reliable source of income.
They wouldn't tell us after 2 or 3 years.
They're looking at changing,
Is there
penalties
any,
on a lot of these crimes that you won't be sending to jail.
have you got any estimate of all what this will cost? Mayor?
Just my back of the envelope calculations using some numbers I found, is kind of the national standard is like, last I checked was $243.80 a square foot to build a jail, but that's been over a year ago. I imagine it's probably went up since then. And we're gonna have to buy land because we don't have land that's big enough to build this facility and expand it in the future if we need to. So the number I keep throwing out, just based on all that, is at least 20 million.
Yes.
Do you have any idea when this will start? As far as the jail started or whatever?
Well, the next step is, we gotta get the PDF. I'm gonna send that to County Corrections Partnership Committee, send out dates, try to get them to meet. And then Mr. Hart's gonna come and do a presentation to that committee. The next step is he's gonna work with us to put together a request for qualifications for an engineering firm to come in and start looking at sites to see what kind of facility we need to build. And then we'll start going down that process. As far as, do I have a timeline, what we're actually gonna break ground? Just depends on how fast we can go through that, what land we find, how much we're gonna have to pay for that, doing those negotiations. So no, right now, I can't tell you. I would like it to be at least a year, no more than a year and a half out, but I can't guarantee that.
I think I saw the other day that Macon County sued for $200 million.
$200 million.
For their conditions in their jail.
Is that what it was for? One
Treatment
tree.
and conditions, both. So,
They sued everybody,
And
everybody in
they
Macon
did.
County.
The one thing that I've been preaching that I don't want us to do, they built theirs where they couldn't expand it. They didn't have the land expanded, where they did have the land, that's where all the sewers, all the electric, everything underground came into the building, so they couldn't go out to one side that they had land. So, I'm gonna sound like a broken record saying that we need to get enough land that we can expand this and build it where it can be expanded. Much like we did the high school. We did that with the high school. We can expand the high school campus very easily, because we designed it that way from the get-go. We can do the same with this jail. But now, an architect is not necessarily going to design it that way unless you make that a priority, because they want another architectural fee to build you another one in 20 years. Okay, so I just cautious us to, make sure, I don't know how to say it without just saying it. We may have to spend a little bit more initially to be able to save a lot down the road.
Maybe.
Maybe not. Yes.
My question is, we are down to about a little over 11 months on the wheel tax. If we're gonna move that, I still think we need to do it as soon as possible where people can get it off their minds. Because if it goes for the people, I do not believe it'll pass it.
Won't pass.
It will not pass.
It doesn't have to go before the people.
That's
We
what I'm
can do it,
suggesting right there.
But we don't need to go out here and do a $50 wheel tax, and we're gonna need an $80 wheel tax. And we certainly don't want to do an $80 wheel tax, we can get by with a $50 wheel tax. Until we know what this building is gonna cost, we can't make that decision.
No, but we better be thinking about it. You can't wait till the last minute to do it. $40 or probably an $80 ain't gonna pay for.
Well, I assure you,
For
you're
this
not the
president.
only one, Jared, that's been thinking. Now, a show of hands of those that have been thinking about it.
For some
Looks
time,
unanimous to me.
for
Okay.
some time.
the next problem is going to find 10 to 15 acres somewhere in this area.
We think we're gonna have to have a minimum of 10 acres.
That's what I'm talking about, 10 to 15, just right here in this little area right here. It's gonna be hard to come up with.
There's land. They may not want to let go of it, but there is land
You can condemn it and take it.
if we have to. There is, the main priorities is it needs to be on sewer. It needs, if possible, be on natural gas, if possible. So, we're looking, once we know for sure how much land we have to have, we'll cross that bridge. But there again, okay, we go out here and we identify a 5-acre tract. That's not big enough. We've wasted our time, and we've wasted the people's time. So we know what size this facility is gonna be, and an engineer and architect says, this is the minimum you have to have. And then we get into site specific, how is this lot laid out? Is it square? Is it long, narrow? All those things come into play, so we are a little early on, other than trying to fly around on Google Earth and look down on the city of Hartsville and say, okay, here's a big hunk of land, here's a big hunk of land, here's a big hunk of land that has these services. And that's kind of what we've been doing. And we have some possibilities. That's all I can say.
I don't think we'll ever get a wheel tax strong enough to pay for all that.
Well, now that we've gotten an additional 300,000 out of Core Civic, we're not
That's
gonna
about
have
10
to
cents right
get it
there.
all. I
on
mean,
tax
that-
rate.
But
That'll
even
help.
that's only would cover the payment on 3 million. No, more than 8 million.
20 million.
How much was the high school?
It started at
8
8.1 and it couldn't go over 10% above that.
8 million, and that was roughly $300,000 a year to pay for that 8 million. So 8 million of it you're covering. So 12 million, you're gonna have to have a $60 wheel tax. No, an $80. But that's better than $120.
Well, think of another thing too. If you don't do that, you've got 38% of the people, taxes are gonna go through the roof.
Well, I think we've all worked real hard at making sure that didn't happen. Oh, you got it.
Oh, yeah. I fought for it all along.
Anything else, Mayor?
No, sir.
Anything, Commissioner? Okay. Public comment, seeing no public, entertain motion to adjourn. Mr. Ford makes a motion to adjourn. Mr. Taylor has a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Hope everybody had a great weekend, a memorable Memorial Day. How was the trip, brother? Have fun? Win a lot of money? Would you win a lot of money?
I've been off a few days.
Let's go ahead and retire.
I can't do it.